know what you want, and therefore your career is obviously what you talk about. And we just do whatever we can do to help you. How we meet our mission, the first thing, if you guys aren't familiar with mycatcareers.com, I would highly recommend checking that out. It is where we list all student employment, so this is part-time jobs, it's internships, and it's full-time jobs, and it's alumni jobs. So at any point during your career, and this includes after you've left MSU, you can use this site, and this is where the majority of employers post all their listings. It's the campus-wide site, so if you're not familiar, I highly recommend you check that out. Career Services also offers career coaching and advising, so if you get to the point, which you will at some point if you haven't already, need to do a resume review, mock interviews, incredibly helpful. If you want to videotape you as an interviewee, that's also real, we can offer that, and it's really helpful so you can learn like the quirks that you do just so you're aware of how you act in an interview. We offer all this stuff, it's completely free, you can see as much as you want. We also offer on-campus interviews. We actually, especially during career fair, employers come to campus and they'll coordinate it on campus. So they make it as easy for MSU students as possible to actually interview with employers. Like I said, my Tech Careers offers alumni employment, and we also obviously offer workshops and fairs like this, and career fair, etc. So this is kind of our planning model, and this is what we really encourage all students to think about when they're preparing for anything career-wise. It's really a circular process. So your first step is, and these are all critical steps, and the first is just a self-assessment to really understand who you are. That's going to lend that the choices you make on your career path are going to be much more thought out, thought through, and that's what we're really encouraging. So first is your self-assessment. What are you good at? What personality traits lend to what type of careers, that kind of thing. Then you can start to think, once you know that, you can start to think about where you want to go in the world of work. And honestly, at this point, most of you, I'm assuming, kind of know since you're here. But it's worth thinking about. This is, and there's a lot of hand tools that we offer that you can do. We have strong interest inventories in the office, just to make sure that you really understand what your options are in the career field that you're thinking of. Then the third step is goal setting, and this is, do I do an internship, do I shadow, do I get a mentor, all those kind of things, really set those goals. Then the very last step, which really, if you've done everything else, is the easiest and the quickest, is actually the job search. So if you do all these steps, job search really last bit of it. You shouldn't just go straight to job search. It's going to make it a lot harder for you. So this is a circular process. You can do it more than one time, but just think about your career path in these terms. We really encourage that. So I don't want to hold it too much because I'm actually really excited to hear what everybody has to say tonight. So welcome. Thank you guys very much for coming. If you want to have a seat, Chantel will moderate the session.
Must there be moderation?
We'll have you guys don't have to sit. I guess it's kind of an awkward classroom for
That's all right, stand as well.
You can sit on the counter.
It's easier to see.
Hold it down there for us. If you want to each introduce yourself, we can start with Scott and tell us about your career path,
Sure.
how you got to where you are now.
I'm Scott Humphrey. I'm the Deputy Director out at Gallatin Field, Bozeman, Yellowstone International Airport now. I was kind of doing an inventory of my career. I've been in aviation for almost 34 years now, so I don't quite feel that old. But I started my aviation career, most of my time was spent with the airlines. I spent just under 24 years with Delta Airlines. Started as a part-time job in college. I was going to San Diego State and ended up spending about 15 years in Delta's Operations Control Center down in Atlanta as a dispatcher, and then was part of the startup team for an airline within an airline called SOM. About 2004, Delta started having problems and started going into bankruptcy, and I had an opportunity to go out to the West Coast. And I spent 4 years starting up Virgin American Airlines, put their operations control center together, took the airline through the certification process and got it launched. And then I spent 2 years in the Caribbean with Cayman Airways, working in some exotic places like Cuba, Havana. I did a lot of work in Havana, down in the Central American area. Always had a want to come to Montana. My wife's from Hamilton. Wanted to raise our son in an area like this, and had an opportunity about 4.5 years ago to apply for the deputy director's position here in Bozeman. Haven't looked back since. So most of my time has been spent in the airline world, but I made the jump to the airports and haven't looked back since. So glad to be here and glad to answer any questions you have.
Okay, I'm Kurt Lewin. I graduated from Montana State here in '91 in the College of Business. Also went to Air Force ROTC over here at Hamilton Hall. I kind of had a storied past. I went to high school here in Bozeman, ended up working at the airport in the same building you guys are probably instructing out of. It used to be Summer Aviation, which has been spun off now, and the fueling parts at Yellowstone Jet. I guess Greg's running the other flight part of it. And worked for Continental out there, worked for Arlen's for a couple years, and kind of did all the glorious fun jobs in the ramp out there. I went to MSU, and I tried to get in the pilot program, and at that time in 1991, they were just not taking a lot of pilots. And I went and took my physical, and you guys might run into this as guys, is I had a color vision deficiency issue with my physical and medical, and I had to get away with the FAA. So if you guys run into that, that's something I could definitely talk to you guys. I've been through that process several times trying to get it all that taken care of. But so I did the long way. I just did my private out here in, I guess, '85 through Sunbird, and I got my instrument before I left college. And then I didn't have a lot of money or time, so I spent the next almost 10 years getting on my ratings. And so I did them down in Florida. I did some at South Missouri State when I was doing my master's degree, and ended up in Oklahoma City. Finished my ME, MEI, ATP, and everything out there. I got my ATP in '98. Got on with Continental Express Airlines and flew to Brasilia and ERJ, and got checked out as a check airman in Brasilia right before 9/11, which of course everything kind of cratered after that. I went back on active duty military, and because I was in the reserve unit, trying to pay my bills and feed a family on a commuter pilot's salary, which you guys have probably discussed a little bit amongst yourselves. And I got to Southwest in 2005. I've been there about 8.5 years. I just moved back here about 2 years ago. So I commute to Las Vegas, based in Vegas.
I think most everybody in the room knows me. I don't know how much in depth I've gone into it in the past, but I'll go ahead. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ronnie Haskins. I'm the Director of Aviation here for Gallatin College. I've started flying back in 1997. I got my private pilot's license. I'm a graduate of the University of Montana, which this week is kind of an interesting week to be a Grizzly. It's I graduated with a business degree from Missoula and went to out of state, went to Arizona, and finished up all my ratings, instrument rating, commercial, and CFI. And that wasn't long after 9/11, and it was, as Kurt just said, it was kind of dismal as far as an industry after that. So I came back to Montana and did two more seasons with the Forest Service. And fortunately, I got connected with a gentleman that was starting a small little flight school here in Bozeman back in 2003. And some of you guys may have heard of it, Summit Aviation. Back then we had one aircraft, we had a Cessna 150. We had a 172, and then we had a Mooney that we could borrow for some commercial training. And so I was working for Summit as a flight instructor, and I was also a customer service agent for Horizon at the airport. So working long days, a lot of hours, flying, then throwing bags, and then going flying again, and trying to find time to eat, sleep in between. And in 2005, we had Ben Walton, the owner of the flight school, and myself, wanted to get a flight program started, and we had approached MSU back in 2004, and MSU says, well, we don't do two-year programs. Why don't you talk to College Technology in Great Falls? Because they were coming onto campus to offer remedial math and English here on this campus. There were some changes at the Board of Regents level at that time. And so we approached them, and they said, sure, yeah, I think we could do that. So I helped get this program, helped write the curriculum, and get the approval through the Board of Regents, and the program started in 2005. And our first graduating class was a whopping 4 students. We started with 13 that first year, and this year we have 58 in the program. I've been doing that I've been in this position ever since the beginning of the program. I also fly Part 135 charter on weekends and when I have free time in the summers. And part of that position is flying, just point charter on demand, and then doing contract work for the Forest Service, which usually involves recon type flights for forest fires, and then flying what we call air attack on forest fires. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
I'm so big Greg would be here right now, so we can fill in, but now we can just open it up for questions for you guys. Probably have none for Ryan, I'm sure.
Are we having pizza or something already?
I'm all over it. So you've been flying for 8 years with Southwest, you said?
Yeah.
How do you like that? How do you like the airlines?
I flew with a guy on Monday, and it was actually pretty funny. He looked at me, and I thought he was being serious at me. He said, "You know what I hate about this job?" I looked at him, he goes, "Not a damn thing." And that's pretty much how it is. I mean, there's some downside to the travel, and it's like any other job. Once you do it enough, and that's kind of the idea, is to keep yourself from getting overwhelmed in any job. If you do it too much, you're going to be tired of it at some point. But there's nothing I'd rather do. There's no career change I'd rather make. There's no decision I would make different. So to me, I'm in the best spot I could ever be at the kind of the cherry airline that's out there right now. So I'm pretty darn happy.
Are you a captain or FO?
I'm an FO. Upgrade should be next summer for me, but luckily for us, in our new contract, we used to have what's called up or out. So if you're an FO, you came up for upgrade, you had to go to upgrade. Now they give you the choice, so you can sit in the right seat, which I'll probably, by choice, sit in the right seat for another 5 years. And you guys will get to this point. I got kids that are 10 and 12, and we've all been scouts, and I coach cross country here in town, a bunch of stuff. So I need my weekends, and probably have questions on schedules and stuff later. But to get what I want, I have to stay in the right seat. So.
Right. Just because you would lose like your time in service, basically,
You don't,
right? Or
you
is
don't
that...
lose anything. When if you move to the left seat,
Or
then, you lose seniority as far
right.
as captains go. So
Right.
as an FO right now, I'm really senior, so I get the schedule and everything I want, the vacation I want, the time off I want, the days a week I want, the trips I want, the overnights I want.
Okay.
Now, if I go to captain, I'm sitting on reserve in Oakland at a base I don't want, getting schedules I don't want, working on weekends.
Okay.
If I wait long enough to upgrade to the left seat, say in 3 or 4 years, I'll skip a lot of that and I'll jump right into where my class is when I go to upgrade. So it's not like I'm starting over, but the downside is you're deferring that salary. You're giving up the difference in pay.
Okay.
But I live my lifestyle where I don't need that. So my truck's 22 years old.
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
You said you're based out of LA?
Vegas.
Even better. Vegas. No, but how does that work as far as travel? Do you just jump on a flight down there?
Yeah, we have 10 bases, and you can pick. It's a seniority thing too. So you can bid when you first get hired there and say, I want to be an FO, and pick it. And then based on seniority, they'll send you either, like our most junior base right now is Oakland. So usually our new FOs start out at Oakland. Vegas is pretty junior, but then we have Chicago and Baltimore, Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, Orlando, Atlanta. So there's plenty of bases to pick from. And when you get senior enough, you can move over to those different bases. So Vegas just works good for me living in Bozeman, and then about half airline pilots commute. So half the guys will choose to live in base, which is probably an easier way to live your life. But if you're a guy like me where I cannot stand big cities and I gotta ski every weekend, that's kind of my deal. So my choice is to move back to Bozeman. So I put up with the commute, like I was talking earlier. I go down on Sunday nights on Aviation on the nonstop. I work Monday through Wednesday. It's usually our schedule is usually 3 on 4 off or 4 on 3 off. So I've been 3 on 4 off. I get in Wednesdays about noon or 1 o'clock. I commute back through Salt Lake or Denver. If I get done early enough, I get home by 3:30. If not, sometimes I get home at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. But so you can jump seat for free in any other airline as a pilot with Southwest or American or whatever. You can jump seat in another airline. It doesn't cost you a dime, but it's just subject to availability. So if there's no seats in the back, you go sit in the cockpit. If there's somebody else in the cockpit like the FAA or somebody from that airline, then you get bumped out of that too, and that happens once in a while.
Okay.
It's not too bad.
We'll go ahead and let Greg introduce himself. You kind of missed this part, but just tell us about yourself and your career history.
Okay, thanks, Chantel. My name is Greg Fuller. I live and work here in Bozeman at Belgrade Airport. I own Sunbird Aviation. It's a charter company, and I know a couple of guys, all the guys here, I guess. Everybody, I think, knows if not what a charter company is. We're just the private side of flight activity as compared to Kurt here on the airlines. So we're FAA Part 135, and Kurt is 121. So that's that in a nutshell. So I missed the introduction, so I don't know quite what I missed. But
And he's a Bozeman High graduate,
Education,
so.
yeah. Give us
Yeah.
your education, how did you
Okay,
your career
okay, so
path?
the full deal, okay, so I didn't want to just jump right in and steal the show. Okay, so as we covered, I went to Bozeman Senior High, went to the Merchant Marine Academy, worked for the Navy, cross-commissioned to the Air Force for a brief spell, through some cutbacks in the aviation program in the military. I took an early out, and most of my flight training and activity was in the civilian side. I was fortunate enough to afford a Mooney aircraft. I got a lot of my experience in that as a private pilot, and then decided to take things seriously. I gave up my commission in the Navy, got my professional aviation licenses, my commercial, multi, on the civilian side, and then worked for a flight training company. The one I trained with, they wanted me back to become an instructor, so I did that in Vegas for 11 months through 9/11. Had a couple of airline interviews and successfully got them, but they fell away because of 9/11. And so I decided, I thought I'd try the charter side of life, and I did. So I did that for about a year and a half. A retired banker contacted me to fly a private jet for him, so I did that. And didn't really like that too much. It was fun, but it's hard. Kevin was explaining the family life and how that works. That's kind of important in the career. So I went back to the charter business, and with a partner, myself and my partner bought the charter company. And I've been there for about a decade. So hopefully that's...
That brings us up to speed.
Okay, good. All right. So I don't know what I missed here, but...
They're just asking questions, so you're good.
Okay, good deal. So...
No, we just have
And
one
he's the only
person
guy that's
asking
asking
questions.
I'll start off.
down, Josh.
Nope, I got it. Put your hand down. Scott, I have a question for you. Okay. In reference to expanding the airport, as far as the new runway that I've heard talk about, where are we at along that? Is it going to be the same size runway? And is it going to potentially increase our class of airspace to a class Charlie?
Class of airspace, no. Where we're at with it right now is we just started the environmental assessment on the runway, and that will take us through the end of 2014. We haven't committed at this point to building it yet. We're just in the planning stages of it. And I was talking to Kurt earlier. We've been watching the general aviation side peak last year, and we've seen a slow decline, but luckily this last month it's starting to pick back up. So if we can get back on the uptick with the general aviation side, takeoffs and landings, that will help the board, to go forward with the decision. We've got such a mix of aircraft out there between the flight schools, between the 135 operators and the 121 operators. With one runway in the mix it gets pretty busy out there at certain times of the day, especially on the weekends, on a nice sunny day. So there is a need for it. It will be just under a 6,000 foot runway. I believe it's 5 and change by. We're trying to get it to be 100 foot wide, not lighted, no approaches, just a runway to put the general aviation side, I guess, would be towards the north off the turf runway out there. So, and there's some other issues in the works with MSU that we'd like to get, hammer out there, and at some point in time put the flight school out there if everything works out. That's, still in the planning stages. So where it's at right now, it's in the planning stages. We'll have a number of meetings, open meetings with the community talk about any issues. If we see the GA traffic continue to tick up, then I would expect that we probably will go through with it. If we see the GA traffic kind of stabilize and decline as it has in the last 6 months, it'll be a little iffy. If we get MSU to come on board, we'd love that. That would help the decision, but it's still up in the air right now. We won't know for another 12 months which way we're going to go.
You mentioned the turf. Will that stick around? Okay, so that's not going away.
It's not going away. No.
Okay.
This isn't an airport meeting, Josh.
It could be.
What?
So my question is for Greg. Kurt kind of gave us a kind of an idea of what the typical airline schedule for a pilot looks like, and from the charter side, what was your typical week look like as far as business flights?
The best way to describe my typical week is imagine an emergency room doctor on call, all right? So when your week is up, you know, when you're on duty, you're pretty much covering any of the randomness in the schedule, which is pretty much it. I'd say, and it's seasonal. I mean, a good question, by the way. I'm sure the whole group would love to know my side of it versus a 121, very structured and scheduled. Ours is not. During certain seasons, we have, I'd say, about 80% of our flights are scheduled, 20% are random pop-up flights. And then it goes the other way in other seasons too. Summer is a blur. I'd say about half of them are scheduled, half of them we just react to. So we, pre-2008, when there was a better economy, we had about 7 different aircraft we managed. And with that, we probably had about, I think, about 18 pilots. So we had enough pilots to cover the airplanes. We would form a certain schedule. It was a small enough operation. Charter companies usually are. It's not like the airlines. The airlines, you have to bid on everything with your seniority and this, that, and the other. The charter network's small enough where we have the older retired crowd that wouldn't mind covering the weekends, where the younger guys with kids can have the weekends to watch the kids play basketball. So it's a good combination. You just work it out. And, the chief pilot, you know, we have the rankings, same as Turkey's operation. We have a chief pilot, director of operations on down the line. They're the final referee if it can't be resolved, and that's kind of the small family in the charter business. You know, so that's actually why I prefer the charter business. My brother, Kurt, flies for United, so we compare a lot of stories, a lot of notes. Some guys like that, you know. I just choose to fly charter. You know, I'm so adapted to it by now. I don't think I could fly at 121. I wouldn't know what to do with my known and scheduled days off. You know, so. But with that, too, the charter business offers things that the airline business can't. We don't know where we're going next, so there's kind of an adventure. And, you know, it's kind of exciting. But then again, you end up in Wolf Point, Montana. So, you know, when you go to southern LA, or the contrast is Wolf Point, Montana, in the dead of winter at midnight. You know, so there's nothing there. So that's pretty much the long and short of the schedule process. That's the question. I hope I answered that.
I have a question for Scott, actually. So what does it entail being the deputy director of the airport then? Like, what's your overall job?
You know, it varies. You know, in the airport, I was once told an airport is just a construction project that never ends. And it's true. Safety of the airfield, first and foremost, is everybody's job responsibility, making sure the field's fit. It ranges from dealing with tenants, from dealing with airlines, to building ramps and interchanges and terminals. No day is really the same. We deal a lot, this time of year with the weather and trying to keep the surfaces open. So, you know, the bulk of our time is usually spent either doing some sort of construction project, making sure that the airfield is open, lights are on, signs are in good shape, and whatnot. So, you know, I really can't say there's a routine to it. You know, I handle a lot of the budget, financial side of it. So it's getting the budgets ready for our board. We're an airport authority, so we meet once a month with a 5-member board, and they kind of set the direction, and we answer to that board. So a lot of time is prepping the board with decisions about a new runway, decisions about a new ramp, trying to educate them as to which way we'd like to go, and they kind of get the pulse of the community. So no day is really the same. But it is, you know, unlike with Kurt and Greg here, it's more or less a, you know, an 8 to 5, but you wear the beaver. weekends off type of job. So there is a lot known in that respect, as you can set your schedule and whatnot. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Scott, from the management side of the airport, what's your opinion on how Big Sky Approach is working out?
You know, it's been in existence for about a month now, but from what I can tell, and these gentlemen here probably have a lot better feel for it than I do, Big Sky Approach through Boise has been a big success. The Boise controllers, as I listen to them on the radio, are there to help everybody out. You know, we really haven't had a good IFR day to see if it really is helping sequence it, but I imagine it's going to increase capacity here quite a bit. They're offering flight following to a lot of the local pilots here. And
Yeah,
I'd say 90% of them like it. There's a few out there that don't like the flight following aspect of it, but it certainly does improve the safety of the airspace with having contact, you know, below the ridge line here down to the ground, whereas our tower is really a, you know, a visual tower only. So, you know, Greg?
Oh, yeah.
Your perspective?
In fact, it was tried and tested 2 days ago in the fog and that snow, which I was flying in. But I would say that there was just huge gains in the approach establishment. I like it a lot. In fact, it's still growing right now, and they're still learning. Mitch up in the tower, he's in his gang. He knows the area so well. They put the personal hometown touch on it. Eventually, approach is going to get the same sensation, same feeling. They're going to know their limitations. They're going to get to know who the local pilots are. And we have the home field advantage, the local pilots. The airlines that come in, the controllers don't know them from anybody else. So Big Sky Approach can grant us, and I'm talking my operation or me specifically as a pilot, certain advantages over the flag guys that they come in. So, but they haven't adapted that hometown touch yet. But when they do, it's going to, you know, nothing's flawless, but it's about as close to flawless as it's going to come. In a mountainous terrain like Bozeman is, I just don't know why it hasn't been there a decade ago. And I think everybody says the same thing. The only thing that they could improve on is a repeater, like an RCO that can broadcast ATIS, you know, on the east side of that mountain range. So we know what's going on by the time we get there. I can't, even at 30-some thousand feet, I still can't acquire ATIS over Billings, which is ridiculous. I do have some advantages in the aircraft with modern equipment. I can get that figured out, but not all of our aircraft have that. So I think Big Sky Approach, in combination of a few other things, is going to make it as good as LA.
One thing that was encouraging when in the initial discussions with the folks at Boise is they came to us saying, we want to learn your operations and what you do. And so they worked with us. We took them through typical days and what kind of scenarios that we're likely to see on any given day in the training environment. And they actually would simulate a lot of that to get them prepared before they went active. And from what I've seen, it's been very professional and almost as good as anywhere else.
They actually, Boise actually wants the business, and they've been very gracious about giving up their time on the radio and helping folks out. So I think it's a win-win for the community and for Boise.
And if you guys can use them, try to use them. I fly GA out there too. I got a little experimental. I fly out of Bozeman, and I try to use it every time because the more their numbers tick up, and the more apt they are to keep that manned at longer hours. And you know, I think they have 2 people per console right now until they get it all sorted out. Then they're going to go to 1 once they get it from there. But I think it's awesome. I mean, it's just, you know, we don't have TCAS, and you're used to flying a plane that has TCAS, and you see the world. And you get a GA plane, and you just can't see anything. I'm getting old, and I can't see anything out in front of me, so it's nice to have.
They get credit for every squawk code that they get, and it's
Yeah.
driven by numbers, Scott. Am I right on this? So if you guys call up the approach and ask for a VFR flight following, or just get some code for whatever reason, practice approaches, what have you, they get credit for that. For every movement, or I guess code, they get an award towards more funding. And so the more you use them, the more they're going to be there. You know, with the government shutdown and stuff like that, if we can drive those numbers, we might be the last one to get cut. Bozeman leads the state in movements and aircraft movements, so I think we're pretty good as far as dodging the bullet on the cutbacks. So I would encourage you guys. And then another thing too, a lot of you guys are just learning how to fly, getting involved in the aviation business here. Participate in that, because quite often in the practice areas for the GA crowd, we're bringing our fast-moving airplanes in, and not all of my equipment has TCAS. Some does, but some does not. And if you guys are on code or talking to approach, we know where you are. They know where you are, and they're going to tell us. Otherwise, you're just flying radar return in the sky, a big chunk of metal. We don't know that, and our equipment can't sense it as well as just communication. So I would encourage everybody, for everybody's safety, to participate. It's just a win-win all the way around.
And you don't have to be on a practice approach or just transitioning in or out. You can go out when you're just out on maneuvers and get flight follow. Go out to the practice area, do some turns, whatever you're going to do, and then just let them know that you're in town, and they'll transition you back to the tower. Get the data. So any time that you're out there is a good time to do it.
I think it's Kurt, is it?
Yeah.
So everybody's always, what are the airlines doing? Overall, for internships and for people that are maybe curious or want to go in that direction as far as airlines, do you have any recommendations on which direction to go to kind of see what they're actually doing? Because
As far as specific airline, or as far as a way to kind of attack getting an airline job?
yeah, like for an airline job.
I think now, of course, there's a lot of things that we've all been through. This 9/11, and now age 65 was a big hit. That as soon as I got to Southwest, all of a sudden the old guys decided, hey, I'll stick around for 5 more years. Right. So nothing happened for 5 years since we had this big stagnation, and now, of course, you get all the rewrite of 117 that's coming through in January with all the rest rules from the Goldwing crash, and then you've got all the new ATP stuff that came out of that, which you guys were aware of. So from what I hear, at least on the, because I sit in the jump seat of the RJs pretty much twice a week coming home, and those guys are having a lot of trouble hiring people. And so, it used to be you go get an externship or internship at the airline, and you try to make all these connections and all this stuff to try to get in there because it's so competitive. Nowadays, I think if you've got the hours and you've got the drive and you make it through the interview, it's certainly a lot easier to get into those jobs. But having been a commuter guy, and I'm not exactly sure what the pay scales are, but they were pretty pathetic when I was there. But you star for a while, and I think you guys are aware of that. I got me $13,500 my first year as a Brazilian, so. And they had to pay for training, so I paid $12 grand for my training, so I netted about $1,800 in 1998. But my wife worked, I had a second job. Nowadays, they don't have to pay for training, that's gone away. Things are growing a little bit faster, and I think, you make 20 or 25 starting off. That's the commuters, and that's just what the commuters are. You don't stay that way long, and it goes up, fairly decently to where you can at least, buy something other than leftover runs.
Well, I think with the 121 operators, we're kind of in the verge of some change in the hiring practices. That it's been very cyclical, and the airlines typically are cyclical in their hiring and when they're not hiring. But in the last 10 years, it seems like those peaks have been really high and been really low. And we're going to start to see that sort of, actually, the hiring is right now, the talk of the regional airlines through, the RA, or the Regional Airline Association is we are concerned that we're not going to be able to find the pilots to fly our aircraft. And they're wondering how they're going to manage to that. With the new ATP rates that came out in August, it could be a little bit of a game changer. In some ways good, in some ways not so good. But if you're trying to look at the positive side of what we're going to see in that is hopefully better pay for pilots, even at the entry level. Time will tell how the ATP hiring minimums is going to shake out in the long run. This legislation got passed rather quickly, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But what I do know, and kind of the word around the campfire anyway, is that folks that are coming through and are interested in an airline job, this could be some pretty exciting times. That once you do hit that mark where you're eligible for the ATP, in a lot of ways it could be you get a pick where you go to work. And in the past, especially as I've been coming up in the industry, that is certainly not the case. And so in a lot of ways, I'm kind of excited about what we're going to see. There's other opportunities that haven't really been available that we're starting to see available now, and that's for folks that are interested, and that's flying for a carrier overseas. Nobody is trained in the world like the United States, and so a pilot that comes from the U.S. or is trained here is kind of a hot commodity in other places in the world. And, I'm sure you guys might know a little bit about this as well. And so there could be some interesting opportunities for up-and-coming pilots that want to go the Part 121 route that simply didn't exist in the past or were limited or
Moderator, no.
Oh, sorry.
You're supposed to moderate.
This gentleman here has had his hand up for a while.
I have a question for you, Ryan. I'm in engineering program right now, mechanical engineering. I'm wondering whether if I want to pursue aviation later, does it shorten my program by any chance, the classes I do? Or?
Engineering is a program that doesn't have a lot of flexibility in as far as elective credit that can be brought in. They're pretty structured in that. There are other majors on campus that do take in a lot of aviation credits. And we do have a lot of engineering students that are interested in adding on their aviation degree. And what most of them end up doing is adding us as a secondary major. Okay. And your degree will certainly meet all of our general education requirements. But you would be, there's not a lot. Flying an airplane is pretty applied, so there's not a lot of transferability in a lot of our flight courses. But if you have, the drive and the want to do that, we're certainly there for you. The program right now, and I've been working with the College of Business over the last 2 years, and that's the bachelor's program here on this campus that has the most transferability. And right now, a student that graduates with our program will have 60 credits, and 54 of those credits can transfer into the business program. So it's like they almost have their first 2 years now going into that. And you can move on with a 2-year in aviation and then 4-year in either business management, accounting, or finance.
This brings up a point, and all airlines, major airlines require a 4-year degree.
The major.
It doesn't matter who it's in. You can go Sky West and fly there all you want without a degree, but the majors will never interview you without a 4-year degree. Some of my friends that didn't have degrees at when I was at regionals, they would do the online stuff at the University of Phoenix or the local college or whatever to finish up or complete their 4-year degree so they can apply to majors. Of course, it depends. You reach a certain limit at a commuter airline, what you can make and pay and scheduling and all that, and it's an infinite jump from the commuters to the majors as far as days off and retirement and all that stuff too. So it's definitely worth the investment. So an engineering degree or business degree like we had it means something at some point. So it's a good thing to keep.
If it helps, I've got a mechanical engineering degree, and the charter business is a little bit different than 121. Carter mentioned that the major carriers won't even look at you if you have a degree. I think it's, I don't quite understand Ryan's program. I've, been around the block, seen it a little bit. I need to wrap my mind around it more. However, I wouldn't discourage you pursuing your engineering degree, and one major reason why, and Kurt backed me up on this, you're not a seasoned airline captain if you haven't been furloughed a handful of times. So your engineering degree you can always fall back on, business degree, what have you.
And you can lose a medical like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of guys I've flown with that are out of long-term medical for a myriad of reasons. It can be as simple as one guy slashed all his tendons in his leg from dropping a piece of aluminum in a hanger. I mean, it was as simple as that. And so having something to fall back on is, I think it's always good.
So if engineering's your bag and you like aviation, do both.
Or marry rich.
Yeah.
Too late.
We got a hand up down here.
My question was actually for you. How competitive is it to get a job in 135 opposed to 121?
That's a great question. And after I answer your question, I got a question for the crowd too regarding that, because we had kind of a script that Chantel provided, which I was actually curious when I addressed the crowd. It's not like the airlines. The charter trade is just a small scale airline. It operates at inefficiencies. Airlines are structured with all kinds of passengers, and their seats they fill, and the more profitable they become. So we're really guarding our bottom line, and we look for talents who are willing to help us. Obviously, number one, fly that airplane safe, but number two, have the people skills, because you are their personal and private pilot on board. Even though the captains on the airlines on occasion will drop back and address their passengers, it's a personal touch. I mean, you might be their pilot to start the day with, and then their personal chauffeur when you get them to the destination, and then they're going to invite you to dinner. So to answer your question, how competitive is it? You just need people skills in addition to your flight skills. And you come to an interview with that kind of people skill touch, and that's going to make the difference. And there's other things too, which I'll address the crowd with. So there's, the general discussion stops. But it's a whole different hiring process. Obviously, you have to have your minimum requirements. We're going to check your background, see if you've had a DUI. We have to go through the same PRIA that they do, and all that protocol. In fact, I just had to fill it out for SkyWest before I got here. Somebody that used to fly for us just go and fly for SkyWest, and your training record follows. So even your private pilot, if you get a violation because you're on the wrong taxiway, landed on the wrong runway, or did something, we're gonna screen all that, same as the airlines, But it's more of a personal interview. You're gonna interview with the owner most likely of the charter business, whereas in the airlines you're gonna interview with their HR people, maybe their chief pilot. Seldom will you get the chance to interview with the owner, but that's the difference. So
I think networking is a big thing too. A lot of times the charter companies like Greg, he'll know people out at the airport from being out at the airport. So when I worked out there for years doing bags and fueling, and I kind of knew everybody. And at the time I didn't have all my radios and stuff, but the guys that did that I worked with, Steve Nichols, those guys out there, that's how they got their jobs, is being out at the airport networking. You don't sometimes know that Greg's hiring. He probably doesn't put an ad out. He probably knows people and asks around, and
exactly.
he'll find people. Whereas the airlines, they'll put it out to the world. And last time Southwest hired, well, they're hiring now, but last fall we had 7,000 applications for 140 positions, and so if you do the numbers, I mean it's competitive. So you've got to have your stuff together. So it's don't piss off your classmates. Your classmate may run a charter business someday or be working there and provide you a restaurant, and that's important. Keep in touch with everybody that's here and everybody that leaves the program. And I don't know what alumni affiliation you guys have for keeping track of that, but it's really important. I'm still helping guys that I know from 20 years ago in the Air Force helping get on Southwest.
It is part of the network business. The smaller the airline and the charter company, it's all about the network. So run that network. Communicate with your classmates. Ryan might have some contacts. It's very important you maintain those relationships. That'll get you hired. In fact, I hired a guy to fly our jet just 500 hours one time because of his attitude. He just had the best attitude. And then he went on to fly for some NASCAR race car drivers. So I springboarded him. He sends me a thank you every year. So I said, I just need you for a little while. And that was enough for him, for his resume. And I applied full time. Went well. In the blue coat and the hat.
Just for Craig and Greg, I'm in the guard right now, Army Guard, looking at next year I'll be going to flight school through that. How did the military help you at all advance in your aviation worldwide, in the military and then also out of the military?
It gives you a competitive edge. If you're real lucky in the Guard, are you in a flight training program in the Guard?
I'm not yet. I'm beginning applying to get into all of that.
Okay, and obviously you fill out all the paperwork. I used to know how to do all that, not so much the Army, but the Navy and the Air Force. When you have that in your resume, guys like me especially, and the airlines will look at that twice. You put that one at the top of your resume, especially your military service, whether you're a pilot in the military or not. But that will help you shine, in the whole evaluation process. In fact, I think would say out of 10 guys that I'd hire, I think eight of them have a military background. Now, it's not required, but I like that because they're structured. I mean, but then in contrast, I hired an F-16 pilot I had to fire. So it's, you know, you are what you make of yourself. But the military does add a lot of weight to your resume.
And the benefits are good too. Like I said, I've been in the reserves for 22 years. I'm still in the reserves, and having that extra paycheck, especially when you're a commuter guy or something, is what made it possible for me to stay in the commuters and have a livelihood. So that's good. GI Bill helped a little bit. I use that for my meetings. And my Southwest interview is a perfect example of it too. I didn't know anybody in Southwest. You know, I had a couple friends were there. They didn't really know anybody. But in my interview, you interviewed with 3 people, 2 pilots and an HR person. The first pilot I interviewed was a Vietnam era F4 guy. In fact, he's one of the POWs in Hanoi Hilton. We have 3 of them in Southwest that were POWs there. And it just so happened that I had run into, I don't know if you guys remember Steve Ritchie, one of the first aces in Vietnam. Well, his backseater was Chuck de Bellevue. I commuted in from Oklahoma City, sit next to a guy, and got to talking to him and started talking Vietnam F4 stuff. Of course, I'm a pilot, get all excited about that shit, so we started bullshitting. He gave me his card, and then I recognized it was Chuck de Bellevue, Richie's backseater from Vietnam. So I put this card in my wallet, didn't think anything of it. It's a funny story. He runs a company here in Oklahoma City now. I've been there for 17 years. So I go to my interview, so I just happened to have this card still in my wallet. And I was like, well, you're an F4 guy. Do you know this guy? And I pulled it out, and it was the card for Chuck de Bellevue. And of course, then we had a rapport. And then the rest of the interview was, we had a good time talking about F4 stuff in Vietnam and got off the subject of, the nervous questions I didn't want to answer. So it worked out good. And then the next interview was a female captain, and she was a Brasilia pilot. She'd flown for Florida Gulf. And I'd been a Brasilia pilot in Czech Airmen, so we hit it off because of the Brasilia civilian connection. And then the HR guy was perfect because I had done my networking, so I'd gone to a couple hiring conferences. This guy's name was Brian Hurley, and he works our ASAP program now. So I met him a couple times. So the combination of the military, the civilian, and then the networking thing all just happened to come together and make my interview a great process. And I ended up getting hired, which was just a freaky thing that I didn't know anybody. So it worked out good. So having anything in your background, whether it's a background as a fueler, and I did all that stuff too, so I could talk to the other aspects of running an airline other than just being a pilot. And like Greg said, the military thing, they love that because it's the guy's disciplined, he's going to show up on time. You basically got an established track record if you've been a successful military guy. I think it's all good.
I think we can, oh, sorry.
Okay.
I think we can do one more question. I know Ryan has a class here he needs to get to, and then we'll wrap it up. And if you guys have any.
I have a quick question for the group here. Out of the bunch that's here today, how many aspire to become a professional pilot, be it an airline or? Okay, well, let's do this the other way. How many don't aspire to be a pilot but want to take on airport management or something like that? What's your focus?
I actually just came. I'm an engineering student. I just came to learn a little bit more about the field and a little bit interested after I graduated to get a private pilot's license.
Okay.
And pizza.
So everybody wants to be a pro pilot, basically. That's the group, okay? And that's what they would like to do. Nobody, manage, like Dave Ryan Springer of sorts, manage the airport. That's a good job, I think.
I was just saying, I just don't know what I'm going to do with it necessarily. Like, my main focus isn't going to be in wildlife or rangeland management, and I just figured that I've always had an eye with prior military to have my pilot's license, and maybe somehow along the way down the road to be able to connect the two. There would be a great possibility. So
Sure, there'd be opportunities for that.
yeah, that's why I'm trying to do both. I mean, I don't know exactly wildlife or fish and wildlife or rangeland, but I definitely think there's a
There's a
future
lot of
there.
Forest Service stuff out of there. There's a lot of private contract stuff that the guys at the airport still do. Stratas have been doing that for 70 years now.
I do stuff with the government too.
Tracking wolves, contract stuff,
Fire suppression,
fire
fire
suppression,
support.
all kinds of stuff that parallels to the wildlife aspect.
Let me throw another question out to the group. There's a little known profession within the airlines, and Kirk, you'll know this profession when I say it, that melds the flying part with the planning part, and if you're in the majors, the pay scales are almost on par with the flight crew, and that's an aircraft dispatcher. Has anybody heard of the aircraft dispatcher profession? Anybody person has heard of it?
Heard of it, not detailed.
All Part 121 carriers and Part 135 flight followers have within their operations control center or their SOC, profession called an aircraft dispatcher. A lot of those dispatchers are pilots. Half are pilots, half are non-pilots. Everybody has to take the written ATP and carry an aircraft dispatch certificate with it, but you share responsibility with the pilot command for pre-flight planning, for the release, the laying of the flight. You're Kurt's wingman on the ground. And it's
You do
another-
all of Kurt's work. My coffee and my hanging. Honestly, he's right. I mean, the dispatchers do everything for you.
Yeah.
Your release is done. Your weather is researched. Your weather is done. Your weight balance is done. It's all done for you, and then you take that information and then you program it, the FMS and the computers, and you do all the airplane stuff. But the planning stuff is done.
You're the part-time meteorologist. I mean, you're planning a route of flights. You're looking at whether you're in there handling the emergencies with the crews. And nobody knows about the profession until you kind of bump into it. That's what happened to me. I kind of bumped into it. I spent half my career in that field, and nobody knows about it. But it's a great field for a pilot that may not want to fly, that may want to stay home and base and have kind of more of a structured life. And I'm telling you, once you get past the commuter, because you'll like Kurt said, you'll starve with the commuter airlines, but once you can get on with the major, the pay scales are on par with the pilot pay scales. Most of them are a unionized position. They're required by Part 121, so you do a lot of the things that you like to do in the program. You're just not manipulating controls per se. So.
And you're home every night,
probably.
And you're home at night. Yeah.
And ATC is another. I mean, dispatch, but man, ATC. I tell you what, when I just want to be home more nights than I'm gone, I would love to be ATC, be it tower control or approach, anything like that. And they love pilots because we know how to speak that language, and it's a great gig. Pay again is at par. In fact, some places I've seen even better. In fact, the military guy, I dare say that all the towers I've been to, and I know several, I don't know of any personnel up there that is not former military. They hire almost exclusively military. It's not a requirement of theirs, but I think on the inside, they really like that. But ATC is a great gig. You can always get your aviation degree and get your pilot's license and fly for fun. But the first time you turn $1 doing it, it becomes a job like any other. I'm sure Kurt would agree. Because it's a thrill. It's the best office chair in the world, best view in the office, But with that, there's a lot of struggles. You're gone a lot. But ATC, you're home practically every night. Tower here, boy, they've got a great schedule. 12-hour days, granted, but they get 3 days off. Am I right on this? And their pay is pretty good. They shared with me they get paid, and thinking, hey, that's not a bad gig. So don't limit yourself to just flying. I mean, if you got the aviation degree, expand yourself. Just look at everything out there. Try the commuters, try the majors, and then as you get older, try the tower.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up because Ryan would want you to get to class, so.
That's all right.
Half his classes.
Have his class.
All the
Ryan,
Ryan, let's start class.
So if you guys would like to, you'll probably get a chance to talk to some of your guys afterwards, but please thank them for coming with them.
Thank you.
I have a brief wrap up, so.
Hey, hey. Quiet down now.
There's a few slides left. Just a couple. I'll make them really fast, I promise. So these guys talk about this a lot, but obviously you guys probably know the correlation of degrees to salary. Just keep that in mind. I'm glad that they reiterated getting a 4-year degree as well. We collect our own salary data. We do have this in the office. I'll skip through it so you guys can actually talk to these guys. But again, if you actually have a degree, obviously almost 80% of students are going to be in place, and then it obviously goes down. So keep that in mind. You guys are going into a very specific industry, so I'm going to skip these. This is important. The top factor in securing a job is that you actually have work experience related to your major, or an internship or co-op experience that is also related. And then everything else is far below that. So get that experience, whatever that may be in aviation. This is also incredibly important in considering that many of our panelists mentioned this, is that the top way that somebody's gonna get a job or finding a job is actually by talking to somebody that mentioned it. And that is across all industries, and they just reiterated it today. So continue to network. That's how, one, you're gonna find the job. This is when, in selecting a position, obviously location for you guys might be a little bit different. Oops, excuse me. And when graduates began their job hunting, you really need to start before. Very few people actually do it after graduation, so don't do that. And we will skip that. So key points, do an internship or two. I know it'll be a little bit different for you guys, but do what you can. Communicate with your advisor. Oh my gosh, please do that. That's incredibly important. Use our services if you can, and again, these guys reiterated, and it is incredibly important, but network. Meet people, get cards, have cards, give them out. If you talk to people, you're one, going to find out about the jobs, and you're also going to have a huge benefit when you actually go to these jobs. This is actually our last career event of the semester, so thanks for coming.